500,000 residents flee Nineveh province in Iraq as militants stormed the Turkish consulate in Mosul and spread their control to the city of Tikrit. Amid talk of mistrust and serious gaps, Iran and world powers hold unscheduled nuclear talks at what the U.S. is calling a critical juncture. And Brazil races for the World Cup opener. The country's president defends the controversial $11 billion price tag as continued protests hold a cloud over the excitement.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening. A day after taking over Iraq's third largest city, the Al-Qaeda-linked ISIL also captured Tikrit today. The violence has caused a mass exodus of Iraqis. I-24 News reporter Shai Ben Ali takes a closer look at the group making major advances.
The militant group, known as the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, is making headlines around the world following its capture of Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit today, as well as Iraq's third-largest city, Mosul, earlier in the week. These conquests have sent thousands of refugees fleeing from their homes.
The situation is very difficult. Mortar shells are landing on the houses. We left our relatives behind. Many people were killed.
The group, also known as ISIL, or ISIS, has its roots in the organization known simply as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which emerged during the aftermath of the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq back in 2003. Its prime objective has always been to establish a caliphate, a single transnational Sunni Islamic state based on Sharia law. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was originally established by the renowned terrorist leader Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who established ties with Osama bin Laden and drew fighters to the cause from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Syria, as well as Iraq. After Zarqawi's death and the eventual U.S. pullout, the organization focused its attacks on Shiite targets within Iraq. But with the outbreak of the Syrian civil war, the group became increasingly involved in the conflict, eventually adopting the new name, the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. In fact, the group's current leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is thought to reside within Syria. Initially, the organization fought alongside other rebel groups such as the Western-backed Free Syrian Army and even merged with the local al-Qaeda affiliate, Jabhat al-Nusra. But tensions soon arose when Syrian locals began to complain of oppression in areas controlled by ISIL.
Al-Nusra is interested in ousting ISIS from Syria, actually, and elsewhere, because they want to monopolize the world of jihad. And there is a competition right now between Al-Qaeda. Al-Nusra, as we know, is part of Al-Qaeda. There is a competition between Al-Qaeda and ISIS over the monopoly of Islamic jihad.
Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri canceled the merger between al-Nusra and ISIL, siding with the Syrian faction. Back in Iraq, ISIL took control of the city of Fallujah in January of this year, when Iraqi troops deserted and earlier this week seized the entire province of Nineveh, including the city of Mosul. It is interesting to note that Mehdi Namouche, the suspect in a shooting at a Jewish museum in Brussels last month, was captured carrying ISIL propaganda, a sign that the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant may not be content to limit its operations to the Middle East.
Yes, and joining me right now in the studio is senior Middle East analyst Ali Waqid. Good evening, Ali.
Good evening, Lucy.
So what, if we want to look at a balance of power between the Iraqi government and the ISIL, what is the current situation?
Well, the Iraqi government led by al-Maliki is still controlling most of the areas in Iraq. But we should pay attention to the fact that the strategy of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is very important to try to build a territorial continuation between Syria and Iraq, between the borders in Syria and Iraq. And capturing Tikrit is very symbolic, but still capturing Mosul is more strategic to the influence that it may have over the conflict in Syria. We know that in the last month and actually in the last year, the Iraqi government led by al-Maliki supplied weapons and supplied fighters to the side of the Syrian regime to fight specifically the ISIL. And now we are looking and seeing that the ISIL is leading a counterattack. It is focused in Iraq, but it can have an impact also on the Syrian conflict. This might be the beginning of a change in the events in the Syrian, beside the impact that it can have in Syria. Lucy, in the coming hours, we are following whether the city of BG will fall also in the hands of the ISIL. The city of BG is the city that is supplying most of the Iraqi oil, and it can have also financial impact.
Let me try to understand maybe a little bit in a wider look. Just a few days ago, we sat here in the studio and we mentioned Iran, because we are seeing that Iran is getting closer to the Arab countries. We're seeing Iran getting closer to Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and to Turkey. And it seems that now it's blinking towards Iraq as well. Can we see in any case right now an intervention from Iran in Iraq in the current situation?
No doubt. Iran will do all its best to help the al-Maliki government to stop this progress of the ISIL. The Iraqi thinks that the Saudi are very involved in supplying weapons to the ISIL as trying to balance the situation in Syria with putting pressure over Iraq, and the Iraqi government led mainly by the Shiite figures as al-Maliki and partners. I think that if the current situation will go on in Iraq, no doubt there will be an intervention. There will be a role played in Iran, very similar to the role that Iran played in Syria. Iran put its weight in order to have a very loyal government in Iraq, and it has no intention to give up the influence over Iraq.
Yes, Ali Waqid, thank you very, very much for
Thank you,
this.
Lucy.
And we're moving a little bit to Israel. Israeli President-elect Reuven Rivlin met with Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, less than 24 hours after a dramatic victory that Israel's prime minister reportedly opposed. I-24 News reporter Uri Shapira has more on the complicated relationship between the two veteran politicians.
Long live the Israeli democracy. Long live the State of Israel.
It's been a long road for Reuven Rivlin from the Parliament House to the President's residence, but his biggest obstacle perhaps stems from his own political party. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly did everything he could to jeopardize Rivlin's efforts to win the desired position.
I know that you will do your best as president, and I promise you that we will work well together because we have a similar background.
Once re-elected in 2013, Netanyahu decided to remove Rivlin from his distinguished position as Israeli parliament speaker and replaced him with Yuli Edelstein. But as the presidential election approached, a vote conducted by the parliament itself, Netanyahu became quite nervous about the possibility of Rivlin in the presidential seat. His first effort was to push a law to postpone or even cancel the elections. When this attempt failed, Netanyahu sought alternative candidates. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Elie Wiesel and former Foreign Minister David Levy were on the Prime Minister's list, but unfortunately for Netanyahu, none of them took on the challenge. Insiders in the Likud Beitenu party claim that up until the last moment, Netanyahu tried to prevent Rivlin's victory and even acted behind the scenes to promote another candidate from an opposing party, the center-left wing's Meir Shitrit, who ended up in second place with only 10 votes less than Rivlin.
Mr. Peres is a great president, and to replace him would be a really quite a job.
Many in Israel believe Rivlin is unqualified to serve as president of Israel due to his lack of experience. But as his spiritual father Zev Jabotinsky used to say, every man must be a king, otherwise life just not worth it.
A rocket was fired into southern Israel from the Gaza Strip today. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu was quick to call out President Mahmoud Abbas, holding him personally responsible in the wake of his unity agreement with Hamas. In response, Abbas condemned the attack and called on Gaza militants to abide by the new government's stated commitment to non-violence. And we're moving on to South Sudan. South Sudan's president held a rare meeting with his rival yesterday in an attempt to end nearly half a year of bloodshed that has decimated the young country. I-24 News correspondent Charles Bibliza reports.
We call on the parties to work with the
A rare meeting between bitter enemies in an attempt to end a 6-month civil war. At a summit in Addis Ababa, Sudanese President Salva Kiir and rebel chief Riek Machar reiterated their commitment to ending the conflict and to implementing political reforms.
They agreed to complete the dialogue process within the coming 60 days on the formation of transitional government of national unity.
Tuesday's encounter was the first between the two since the signing of a May 9th ceasefire, which had raised hopes of an immediate cessation to the violence.
I want to assure you that I and my the party I'm leading, and the army that I'm leading will implement this agreement without any fail. By me signing today this agreement, I'm sending the signal. This conflict must be ended peacefully.
But the truce, not unlike a similar one reached in January, was broken within hours, further inflaming a crisis that has already killed thousands and forced more than 1.3 million people from their homes. The conflict has increasingly become sectarian in nature, pitting members of Kiir's Dinka tribe against Machar's Nuer. The UN has warned that crimes against humanity have likely been committed, including brutal attacks on civilians and the usage of rape as a weapon. According to analysts, the ongoing absence of peace has raised the very real prospects of severe famine and even genocide.
Yes, direct consultations between the United States and Iranian officials ended in Geneva on Tuesday night, with Tehran's top negotiator reiterating that, quote, differences remain. The bilateral talks were geared towards breaking the obstacles in wider nuclear negotiations between Iran and world powers, set to resume later this month. And to understand a little bit more, with me in the set is Iranian politics analyst Meir Javed Anfar. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Is it so? Are the gaps narrowing between the two sides?
They're not. Iran wants to have something like 50,000 centrifuges. It currently has 19,000. It wants to increase the number of its centrifuges by at least 31,000. The P5+1 want Iran to decrease perhaps by 15,000. The Iranians are saying, look, we have a nuclear reactor in Bushehr. Right now, the Russians are supplying the enriched uranium. They're going to supply it by 2021. After that, we can't trust the Russians. So we need to have more centrifuges. And this is the number is right now is the difference is the big problem.
So what should be the next step? Because if the differences are still up, so what we are seeing basically is only talks and talks and more talks.
The good news here, Lucy, is that the Iranians are interested in continuing to talk. Nobody's walking away from the table. The deadline is July 20th. The next round, the next time they're going to meet is the 16th of June. Let's not forget the current meeting that started at the beginning of this week was not scheduled. It was all of a sudden out of the blue because I think one of the sides panicked and said, look, we need to try this. The good thing is that they're talking. I usually believe in negotiations you should give and take. I think Obama has given a lot. I think the number that Iran is demanding is exaggerated, and I think Obama and the P5+1 are not going to move on this.
So if the P5+1 are not going to move on this, and you're saying that the Iranians just want to continue talking, at the end of the day and at the end of the road, someone will give up, and it seems that Iran would lose.
Probably that's. See, it's very important in negotiation strategy, especially what I'm reading in the Iranian press, is that the conservatives are criticizing Rouhani by saying, look, if you want to sell something for 250, don't start at 250. You start at 400.
They might be understanding that they're going to lose. This is why they're getting closer to the Arab world.
It's actually possible that they realize that Rouhani realizes that, look, in order to be able to sell this deal at home, he needs to come up first with some outrageous number and fight for it. And when he can show the conservatives there's no way he can get it, then come to the terms of the West so that he has a deal. But also when he goes home, he politically survives because he can say to the hardliners, look, I want to ask for 50,000 I really insisted. I fought with the P5+1. It was impossible, and we couldn't say no to any deal because the economy could collapse under the sanctions.
So, what is the next step should be if Iran wants to see anything to gain anything from these talks?
We have another round coming up 16th of June. The deadline is July 20th. We may have something even before then. Even if we don't, we're going to have another 6 months. And these 6 months, Iran is not going to get more money. If they get, it's going to be very small. And to be honest with you, by the way they're continuing, Iran is at the losing side at the moment.
You know, and I'm asking, until when Rouhani will continue walking between the drops?
Trust me, it's more difficult for him than the West.
Yes, I believe so. Mayor Javed Anfar, thank you very much for
Thank you.
And now we're moving to Inside Israel. And we're getting back a little bit to Ruby Rivlin that won yesterday the presidency elections, but he was not the only one who went to bed last night smiling. Gideon Sa'ar, number 2 in the Likud party list, is paving his way to replace Benjamin Netanyahu. Who is he? In the next report.
Could this man be the one who will replace King Bibi? Judging by Tuesday's events, this scenario is a very high possibility. The presidential elections were not only a victory for Reuven Rivlin, but also for Gideon Sa'ar, Israel's Minister of Interior Affairs and a Likud party member. Sa'ar was the backstage coordinator who aimed for the win of Rivlin. The candidate Benjamin Netanyahu was the least satisfied with. Yet Rivlin is not the only challenge that awaits Netanyahu. Gideon Sa'ar is a rising star with an aura of a celebrity. He's a lawyer and journalist by profession who lives in the hip city of Tel Aviv. He's a DJ in his spare time and married for the second time to one of Israel's top news anchors, Geula Even. Even more, he built his political power slowly but surely. Sa'ar has been in political circles since 1999 with his first role as cabinet secretary in the first Netanyahu government. He served in several posts, including Likud parliamentary group chairman and deputy parliament speaker. His big jump was in December 2008 when he reached second place in the Likud primaries, coming in after leader Benjamin Netanyahu with 74% of the vote. He reserved his seat and was appointed Minister of Education. In 2012, he again gained the most votes in Likud primaries and entered the 19th parliament. During his many years in Israeli politics, Sa'ar has managed to collect a lot of friends and supporters and has been received with open arms by both voters of the ruling Likud party and political colleagues. Now he is considered to be the one who will lead the right-wing party, sooner or later. The moment the next Israeli president was announced may also have been the moment Netanyahu's heir was declared.
I love the flash from Benjamin
He came in as
Netanyahu to
Bibi
Gideon
and
Sa'ar, yes.
went out as Gideon Sa'ar. Well, a lot of political maneuvers happened yesterday in the Israeli parliament, but at the end it was left to Gideon Sa'ar to whip the coalition's vote into shape in the second round to secure Rivlin's victory from his own home party, the Likud. Exactly what Bibi was trying to prevent Netanyahu, I'm sorry. And the line Sa'ar drew yesterday was very clear. And even though the deadline of Netanyahu is a vague one, next to it, there's Gideon Sa'ar name. Now let's see if Israelis are getting used to this new player.
Let's say.
He could be a very good minister and a prime minister. He is good at everything, an extremely serious man.
I'm not sure he's a good candidate. I think he's a little bit extremist. We need some more tolerant candidates.
I think he is suitable. He's reliable, talented, bubbly, suitable.
He's not suitable to be prime minister. He should stay what he is. There's no one like Bibi.
I think all the people like all the president is the same coin for different face.
And tonight, Lucy, let's finish with a funny tone. The giant and his baby. What's wrong with the next picture?
Let's see.
Let's see.
Oh my God.
Well, as you can see, the General Chief of Staff Benny Gantz looks huge, while Defense Minister Moshe Bogi Ya'alon looks tiny and kind of look like he's sitting on his lap. I don't know what about you. This picture made my week.
You know, in French they say pas bien.
Pas bien.
Pas bien.
Pas bien, and maybe they're trying to hint us something. Who knows?
I don't know, but I'm not going to say anything. But we're always finishing it with a funny tone.
That's true. That's true. My mistake.
Ellie Ochenberg, thank you very much for
Thank
this and
you.
for the picture. It was very good. We're going out for a small break, 2 minutes break, and then we will be back for the daily question. Half a million residents flee Nineveh province in Iraq as militants stormed the Turkish consulate in Mosul and spread their control to the city of Tikrit. Amid talk of mistrust and serious gaps, Iran and world powers hold unscheduled nuclear talks at what the U.S. is calling a critical juncture. And Brazil braces for the World Cup opener. The country's president defends the controversial $11 billion price tag. Continued protests hold a cloud over the excitement. There is a widespread speculation that former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is positioning herself for a 2016 presidential run. But so far, she has refrained from announcing her intentions, while she would no doubt be the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. Questions remain over her suitability for office. And today on the Daily Question, we asked you, do you think that Hillary Clinton should be the next U.S. president? And joining me tonight to discuss this is I-24 News correspondent Charles Belizer. Good evening, Charles.
Hi, Lucy.
And also Owen Alterman, research fellow at the INSS. Good evening, Owen.
Good evening, Lucy.
So I'm going to see your smile just in 1 second, but before that, Charles, let's see the poll.
Well, there's absolutely no question that she'd be the most recognizable candidate. The question is whether her experience would translate into a successful presidency.
Yes.
The answer from our viewers is a resounding and somewhat surprising no, with almost 2/3 saying that Hillary Clinton would not be a good president or should not be the next president.
I'm sure that the viewers will say yes.
I was a little bit surprised as well. Many of the comments that we received were along the lines of this one. So, for example, Johnny McBush, ironically,
okay,
George Bush, McBush, fine, from New Orleans says, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I think she will be an awful president. She can't handle the pressure. Look what happened in Benghazi. So here's Benghazi Gate coming back to haunt Hillary. Obviously, we're talking about her alleged failure, the State Department's failure, to protect the consulate in Benghazi from the attack that happened on September 11th.
Yes.
So even if she were to run for president, for example, this would also open her up to more criticism.
You know, some people will say the same about Golda Meir, the only female prime minister that we had here in Israel.
100%. And you know what? It's interesting. There's also an other side, and there are people, for example, who alluded to what you're just saying. So she said, I will, for example, Thomas O'Clair in New York City said, I will support her for sure. There are very few women in America that are more suitable than her, and I think it's about time that we have a female president. Who can argue with that? 51% of the population, and you know, Barack Obama was the first African American, so it's possible that the trend will continue.
Let's ask Owen if it is about time to have a female president in the United States. Owen? Owen,
well,
yes.
Sure, I think it's probably well overdue. You know, but that's obviously not the only consideration. There's also considerations of her qualifications, of her positions, and so forth. But she's still very far ahead in the Democratic primary race and would be a very strong candidate in the general election.
And she has a lot of support from what we understand, let's see, in the United States and, like you said, the Democratic Party. But let's check back just a little bit to see the past. Is she really capable for the job?
Hillary Clinton would be one of the most qualified presidents ever to take the oath of office in the United States. If you look at the different types of positions she's held, and she's also had the very unique situation of being married to a sitting president and seeing really from the inside about how it works. She's had the ups and downs of her career, including especially her political career. So she certainly has the qualifications on paper to do it. So then it's a question of her character, and that's something that a long presidential campaign will test.
How much do you think that the influence of her husband, Bill Clinton, will be on her if she will be in this position? Because he had a very good, let's say, president time.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, Lucy, you're absolutely right. Bill Clinton remains an incredibly popular figure in America and in American politics. And if we look back at the speech he gave in 2012 at the Democratic Convention, which was viewed as in some ways upstaging Barack Obama, which is not an easy thing to do, given Barack Obama's speaking ability. But on the other hand, there is the risk of Hillary Clinton being viewed as someone who's coming in from the past, as someone who's a throwback to the 1990s, as someone who's not future-oriented and future-looking, and not a new face. And as we know, new fresh faces are good at politics.
Owen Alterman, did you just say that Hillary is from the 90s? This is not nice. Thank you very much for this.
Just to continue also about what he was alluding to in terms of her experience, Mickey Darwin from Newark, New Jersey says that after her time with Bill in the White House, she also served in the Senate, and as U.S. Secretary of State, she would indeed be one of the most qualified presidents ever.
No one can deny, Charles, her abilities and her professional capabilities and her background. This is something that she's taking with her to the presidency, so no one can say that she is not suitable for the job.
Absolutely, but I want to look at another angle here, which was actually quite interesting. We got a comment from Fallon Mahara from Paris, who says, despite Hillary's qualifications, what difference does it make? She's going to lose to the Republicans anyways. So let's not forget that Hillary Clinton will be up against another nominee from another party. And I want to look back to Barack Obama's campaign in 2008, when the nation was really suffering from George Bush fatigue, and the Democrats, it appeared as though the Republicans really had no shot, no matter who they fielded. So the question now, after 8 years of Obama, will that cycle be the opposite?
Let's hear one more comment before.
There's another interesting one from Ezra from Tel Aviv. He asks whether Hillary Clinton will be good for the U.S. is for the American people to decide. As an Israeli, though, I would hate to see her as president due to her anti-Israel record. Now, I thought this was a little bit harsh. We're not going to have a debate on her Israel record, but you know, it's interesting to note.
Israelis are always looking at the United States as it's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Charles Biblazer, thank you very much for this.
Lucy. Pleasure.
Maybe next time we ask, should Hillary Clinton suitable for presidency of Israel? We're going out for a 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Half a million residents fleeing in Nineveh province in Iraq as militants stormed a Turkish consulate in Mosul and spread their control to the city of Tikrit. Amid talk of mistrust and serious gaps, Iran and world powers hold unscheduled nuclear talks at what the U.S. is calling a critical juncture. And Brazil braces for the World Cup opener. The country's president defends the controversial $11 billion price tag as continued protests hold a cloud over the excitement. We just said excitement. The excitement is building as one of the world's biggest sporting events. The World Cup is set to kick off tomorrow in Brazil. I-24 News reporter Shai Ben-Ari takes a look at the last-minute preparations.
24 hours ahead of the biggest sporting event in the world, it seems football fans around the globe can't wait to get started. In Australia, a balloon replica of Rio de Janeiro's famous Christ the Redeemer statue has launched into the skies over Melbourne to celebrate Brazil's World Cup. And even in Buenos Aires, the capital of fierce rival Argentina, the iconic obelisk adoring the city's most famous street was lit up in the colors of the Brazilian flag to pay homage to their northern neighbors. But in Brazil itself, protests over the enormous financial investments in the games continue to mar preparations.
The players will get rich, not us. Prostitutes, hotels, everything around the World Cup will make money, but not us. We will continue in poverty forever.
Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff answered her critics in a televised speech Tuesday.
There are people who claim the resources for the World Cup should have been directed to healthcare and education. I hear and respect those opinions, but I don't agree with them. It is a false dilemma.
Also Tuesday in Sao Paulo, FIFA held its annual congress in the city, set to host Thursday opening game between Brazil and Croatia. As usual, FIFA president faced calls for resignation amid accusation of corruption.
We believe FIFA brought negative things to Brazil and to our people, like, for instance, the exclusion zones, which are security areas of 2 kilometers around stadiums and fan fests.
As the national teams continue to prepare for Thursday kickoff, we can only hope that this World Cup will be remembered for the right reasons.
The World Cup, so let's talk sports. And joining me is the host of the I-24 News Sports Magazine, Weekend Magazine, Mirav Savir. Good evening.
Hi.
So the Brazilians are angry, but still, it's 24 hours before.
We're just 26, 27 hours away from kickoff. We've been talking about it for so long that I can't believe we've actually made it here.
Yeah, we just talked about it.
And every day? Every day?
Yeah, we want so much to be there.
And we just heard in the report, obviously, people are hoping that we talk about it for all the right reasons. Unfortunately, right now, we're talking about it for all the wrong reasons. Not only do we have the protests still going on in Brazil and Sao Paulo, all around the country, that are really hurting the World Cup, but also, as in the past 24 hours, they do have the FIFA conferences that they have before every World Cup taking place in Sao Paulo. And we're just getting more and more negativity out there. This latest thing is that there's a lot of tension between leaders in the football community. Sepp Blatter, he is the FIFA president. Everyone's calling for him to step down. And according to some reports, he actually came out in yesterday's meeting. He hasn't said it publicly yet, saying he will stand for a 5th bid as president. He's been president since 1998. That's a long time. And he did in 2011 promise that he won't do it again, and a lot of the leaders are very angry about this. They don't want him to do it again. In the past couple of years, there's been a lot of corruption cases with FIFA, and it's plagued by all these things that they're tarnishing the FIFA's name, and they're saying, it's your fault. You've been the one in charge. They're calling for him to step down. Some of them stormed out of the meetings. There are more meetings today, and they're expecting him to say, yes, he will stand for a 5th bid. We'll see how everybody reacts and if it actually happens, but it's not looking good for Blatter.
Yeah, it's not looking good, but somehow I think that he will manage to get out of it. Maybe.
We hope for FIFA that he doesn't get that 5th bid so that they can move past they already have this Qatar mess. You don't need it to keep on going.
Definitely. So let's now talk about Iran, but in a good sense.
In a good sense. We're always talking about the big guns coming into this tournament. Who's going to win? Who's going to do so well? Well, there are the little guys. We can't forget about them. Iran and Bosnia are these 2 little guys. Iran, it's not their first rendezvous in the World Cup. They've been here before. But it's a big deal. It's not a country that you usually think of as a football-loving country. But they did. You saw it last summer when they finally made it to the finals, people out cheering in the streets, and it's a big deal.
Something that never happened here, Mirav.
Something that hasn't happened here, but we have representation from the Middle East. We do have someone there. The thing is, you look at these little guys, they don't have the players that the big international stars are. We don't have the hopes for them. They're actually paired in the same group with Argentina and Nigeria. Not the biggest powerhouse, but they're moving on up. So there's very, very little hope for these 2 teams. The Iranians were even told not to swap jerseys because they don't have enough of them.
Yeah, but they won in 2002 against the United States.
Yes, they did. They won against the United States. It was a big deal. That's their only victory in 4 appearances in the World Cup.
Who knows? You know, maybe yes, maybe no.
Anything could happen. This is sports.
This is sports. Exactly. Mirav Savir, thank you very much for this. And we're moving to not concerning sport at all, or maybe yes. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel appeared before a congressional committee today to explain and defend the Obama administration's controversial decision to release 5 Taliban detainees in exchange for captive U.S. soldier Bo Bogdal. Here is some of what Hagel had to say.
This is not a risk-free business. We get that. The U.S. government has transferred 620 detainees from Guantanamo since May 2002. with 532 transfers occurring during the Bush administration and 88 transfers occurring during the Obama administration. In the case of these 5 detainees, the security measures Qatar put in place led me, as Secretary of Defense, to determine, consistent with the National Defense Authorization Act, that the risks they pose to the United States, our citizens, and our interests were substantially mitigated.
And with me now is investigative journalist Martin Himmel. Good to have you, Martin.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, unfortunately, through Skype. But let's try to understand what we just heard from Hagel. What is the line of defense that he took in front of the committee?
He said that the life of Bo Bergdahl would be in jeopardy if he were to inform the Congress, as he was supposed to, before releasing the 5 militant commanders from Guantanamo Bay. He said that that transfer had to be made in secret, or that Bo Bergdahl's life would have been threatened, and he had the authority to do so, even though the president had made a promise that in most cases he would inform the Congress before he released anybody from Guantanamo Bay.
So was it the same line like Barack Obama?
It's similar, but it's more enhanced than that. The Secretary of Defense comes with certain qualities that can't be argued with. He's a war veteran. He's been wounded. He has been wounded in combat in Vietnam. He knows what war is. Many of the people he's talking to the Congress do not. And he actually was quite in a confrontation with several of these members when they tried to insinuate that he's holding this prisoner who's now in Frankfurt, in a base near Frankfurt, and receiving medical treatment, that he's holding there because of the political fallout from this whole issue. He said that the only issue, reason that the soldier is there, is that his medical and psychological state. And he took he had great anger against the senators for suggesting, or the congressmen suggesting, it could be any other reason.
Yes, Martin Himmel from New York. Thank you very much for this. We continue with the United States. The American Congress is in shock as Republican Eric Cantor lost the primary elections to a Tea Party challenger in Virginia's 7th congressional district, widening the gap between mainstream Republican leaders in Washington and more conservative Tea Party rivals. I-24 News correspondent Shahal Peled has the details.
In a stunning defeat, American House Majority Leader Eric Cantor was surprisingly easily beaten by a relatively unknown Tea Party challenger and college economics professor David Bratt.
I know there's a lot of long faces here tonight, and it's disappointing, sure. But I believe in this country. I believe there's opportunity around the next corner for all of us.
Tuesday's shocking Republican primary upset sent tremors throughout Congress. A 7-term congressman, Cantor had spent more than $5 million to head off the challenge from Bratt, a political newcomer who spent only $122,000, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. Bratt, who had argued throughout his campaign that Cantor had betrayed conservative principles on spending, debt and immigration, had about 56% of the vote to Cantor's 44%.
All right, everybody, I want to give thanks endlessly tonight. This is the happiest moment, obviously, of my life.
Cantor, a powerful party veteran, had been seen by many as an eventual successor to House Speaker John Boehner and was the leading hardliner behind the prolonging of the 2013 American government shutdown. The loss of his Richmond, Virginia seat dramatically reduces the likelihood that Congress will pass immigration reform this year, which was supported by Cantor and attacked by Bratt. The result also means a shake-up in Republican leadership in the midst of the campaign season for November's midterm congressional elections, with the once safe House seat now thrown up in the air.
And joining me right now is Mark Tell, co-chairman of Republicans Abroad Israel. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Is this Lucy?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I miss being there. How are you?
So where are you? You should have come here to the studio.
Well, tonight I'm a grandfather babysitting 3 lovely children out here in just west of Jericho. So
I hope
I'll have to make do by telephone.
So tonight. I can say that they have the best babysitter in the world. So let's talk a little bit about the Tea Party. This is a big hit for the Republicans, I have to say.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with you, Lucy. I, along with many, were shocked by the results, as was Eric Cantor himself, I'm sure, and his people. I think I've been trying to make some sense out of it in the last 24 hours or so, and one of the things that struck me as I was reading, talking to people back in the States and reading the press on the subject, is that Eric and his staff paid remarkably little attention to the requests of constituents in his district for him to come there and participate in town meetings and other local activities during the primary campaign. He took it for granted that he'd be reelected. This is a big mistake, and I understand that when a person like Eric reaches the position of power and leadership that he's in as majority leader in the House of Representatives, it's easy to forget that
Mark,
the people who put him there.
You know, I'm trying to understand what is going on right now in the United States. What is going on right now among the Republicans? This is very, very surprising and very worrying.
I tell you, I'm one of those that would tend to minimize what's going on. I think what's happened in Eric's case is, as I said, is just a failure really to do basic constituent work in his home district, and he took for granted that he would be returned. I think the Speaker of the House is going to have a problem in the Ohio primary, and I think what happened to Eric Cantor should be a very vivid lesson to John Boehner about about his chances of returning to the House. Nothing can be taken for granted. On the other hand, look, there is a very large section of the American public that remains dissatisfied with Washington both with respect to both parties, particularly the Democrats, but also the Republicans, who they sent in 2010 and 2012 to Washington with the idea they would change things. Yes. And many of them remain discontented, and they're expressing their views by their votes in the primary.
Yes, Mark, thank you very much for this, and I hope that you have some good bedtime stories for your grandchildren.
Oh, well, they're all sleeping soundly, Lucy. I hope to see you in person soon.
Very soon, I hope so as well. Thank you very much for this. And we're going on to economy. And with me, someone who's not going to tell me any bedtime story is the host of I-24 News Economy Magazine, Benjamin Chongal-Faris. Good evening.
I hope it's not a bedtime story.
Okay. No, I think that it's more of an action movie story. After the election in Ukraine, really, they weren't thinking that Russia is going to do something about it?
Yeah, it's really funny, isn't it? I mean, really the story here, like what we see is, Ukraine is asking Russia to give the same price that Vladimir Putin had agreed with Yanukovych, which is $200 less than what they're getting now. Okay, yeah. They're like more than $200. Actually, now the price that Russia wants is $486 per 1,000 cubic meters.
So $286 more.
They want 260. They want a deal that is 268, which is what Russian President Vladimir Putin had agreed with Yanukovych before he was ousted. Now, of course, Russia said, "Well, forget about it. We're not friends anymore. You pay $200 more."
So what is the next step?
So the next step is this. I mean, on the one hand, Russia has oil, has gas. They need to sell it, okay? Yeah, they recently just have an agreement with China, but it's going to take a while before they actually start selling to Asia. I do think down the road, Asia is going to be a more natural market for them. The biggest, the biggest users, importers of gas and oil are in Asia.
Like showing
but
muscles?
For now, they need it. They need it. I don't think it's so much showing. It's kind of a, it's just a game of who's more powerful here. Europe needs the gas. They need about, for 15% of supplies, they need basically the gas that comes through Ukraine from Russia. Ukraine obviously needs it.
Of course.
And Russia needs to sell it. So who needs it more? It's just this game of who's going to give.
Do you think that, from your perspective, do you think that, let's say, trying to tighten the gaps in the economic way will affect the politics?
It affects everybody. Yes, I mean, there's been talk, the World Bank also said, as there are potentially more retaliatory actions down the road, with Europe, with the US essentially strengthening sanctions as long as Russia keeps on supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine. It's going to affect everybody. It's already affecting Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, if Eastern Europe goes down, it takes the EU with it to some extent. I mean, it affects everybody in the end, and it affects Russia.
What is Russia's, if we want to look after China, and what is Russia's next goal?
So here's the deal. I mean, it's really down to negotiations. Currently the price that Russia gives to Europe in general is about $380 per 1,000 cubic meters. The price they gave to China is a little more, or between $350 and $380. Ukraine, they want to pay, $486. Okay. The Ukraine got a deal, an offer from Russia to pay $100 less than that. It's about $386. It's a little bit higher than Europe is getting. Okay, They said no, we want 268. We want what you guys gave to Yanukovych. That's what we want.
No, you cannot fight and then claim something.
It's a little rough. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yes, let's see what happens.
Indeed.
Benjamin, thank you very much.
Lucy.
Thank you for this story, by the way. More than a century ago, the Great Titanic sank into the ocean, never to see the light of day again. But hundreds of artifacts from the sunken ship were rescued and are now on display. I-24 News culture correspondent Shahal Peled takes a look at the remains of what was once briefly considered mankind's masterpiece.
The story of the Titanic hasn't ceased to fascinate the world, although the doomed vessel, which hit an iceberg on April 14, 1912, will almost likely never be raised. Thousands of artifacts have been recovered from its underwater ruins.
There are 200 real pieces actually taken from the bottom of the sea and the vessel itself.
The world's largest Titanic exhibition has reached Israel after touring some 15 countries in the past 15 years and being visited by more than 25 million people.
It's a recreation of what the real vessel had. You can see the first-class cabin, third-class cabin, the place where the dinners and the dancing hall were. This is really a famous place, which you can see in the film. So you really get as close to the atmosphere on a real Titanic.
The British passenger liner set out 102 years ago on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City. Considered practically unsinkable, it carried 2,224 passengers and crew. Only 710 people survived.
Well, it's not so much as probably the most well-known tragic story in the world, due to all sorts of reasons. Because, there is a mystery behind it, there is a drama behind it, and there is Hollywood behind it.
For some of the visitors, it's a reminder of some of our modern-day tragedies.
Today we go on cruises and we see these gigantic boats. Actually, we've heard about a story recently, and you say, how on earth can it happen? You really feel so comfortable and so safe in one of these things, and all of a sudden you see this in front of your eyes, feeling it, you're reliving it, and it's pretty amazing.
The thorough reproduction includes well-preserved artifacts, considering their age and what they've been through, rescued from 3,000 meters below the surface in missions beginning in 1994.
That's an example of an artifact, that chandelier or candelabra, It survived somehow, it's distorted. It was collected from the bottom of a sea, a little bit cleaned, you see it's very well preserved, so that's one of the items, like a typical item which was found there, or saved.
Even a real ice replica of the famous iceberg was installed.
It's very difficult to sustain it in a constant temperature. It needs to be like a freezer in the back. So it took us like a week to build it.
Before leaving for Switzerland, the artifacts are on display for 3 months, allowing the visitors a unique glimpse at the unbelievable history behind the Hollywood drama.
Just makes you appreciate the movie more, I think. And if we just looked at history, now for a look at history this week. Joining me is I-24 News correspondent Ori Shapiro. Good evening, Ori.
Hello, Lucy. How are you?
So let's go not so way back to the Six-Day War here in Israel that ended this day.
Perhaps one of the most remarkable achievements of Israel. Israel defeated 5 nations and occupied the West Bank, the Golan Heights, Gaza Strips, and the peninsula, the Sinai Peninsula. But also it opened a debate, a very big dispute that lasted until today. Unfortunately, the Palestinian
Yeah, who was the one to blame? Who was the one to who took responsibility on it? And of course, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that never ever ends.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So let's move to U.S. President Ronald Reagan that challenges Gorbachev.
Well, yeah, that was a very remarkable speech of Mr. Reagan. Mr. Reagan challenged Gorbachev, saying, "Open this gate." Maybe we can take a look for a few seconds of this.
Let's see.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
Yes, indeed.
It is a piece of history.
A piece of history, and of course, 2 years later, the Berlin Wall was toppled. So he made history.
Of course, he made history.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you, when you look at these footage, it makes you miss real leaders. I have to.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't
Reagan was a very strong leader. He pushed to end the Cold War. You can say that. He was very aggressive. But he also, he got credit for doing all these achievements.
Yes, and let's, I can get no satisfaction. And the Rolling Stones were here just
they were
a
just
week
here.
ago.
I went to their concert. They were just like it was 50 years ago, and indeed in 1965, almost 50 years ago, they released their biggest hit, and number one for 4 weeks in the American Billboard. I can get no satisfaction. There are some rumors about how they got into the special guitar riff. Some said Keith Richards dreamed about this riff. Of course, one of the most popular songs in the history of rock.
You came back so excited from the show that and it's very surprising to see you really, really excited because you're always so calm. What was it for you? How was it like?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Mick Jagger is one hell of a performer. He really rocked Tel Aviv. And yes, it's a great band. Maybe one of the best bands in the history.
So I wonder if you move like Jagger.
No, I don't believe I do. There's only one Jagger.
Ori Shapira, thank you very much for this. We're going out for a small break, 4 minutes, and then we will be back.